And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, great scholars and great leaders. Thank you very much for joining us again tonight. We are celebrating Women's Month. Although here at Wild, we celebrate Women's Month every week and every day, and every month, and every year. But because of our country and our laws of the country, and we have to make sure that we also follow that. So for the colleagues who are joining us from outside of South Africa, August is a Women's Month in South Africa. As we said a few weeks ago, there is a special holiday on the 9th of August which celebrates women. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We discuss leadership because leadership is everything, and everything is leadership. If we want to learn, if we want to grow, if we want to succeed, if we want to thrive, we must take leadership. That is why we invested this time and resources. Every Wednesdays we meet as scholars and as leaders to discuss leadership. Tonight, we are going to be, the session is going to be moderated by my dear sister, as part of Wild Furniture. She has been with us for many years. She has participated in many events here in Wild, and also very good insights and encouragement and guidance to me personally. I really appreciate Ms Nomkhitha for her guidance and for, as I'm saying, for assistance, for many things. She will be introducing the speaker and then she will take over from here. Ms Nomkhitha, over to you, my sister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. And good evening to everyone, especially our guest speaker, Dr. Lulu Gwagwa. I would like to then maybe start off traditionally by introducing our speaker. We don't traditionally read the full bio when we introduce, but we do give some highlights about our speaker. Dr. Lulu Gwagwa is the Exec Director for Lereko Investment. At some point, she was the CEO at the IDT. Those many years ago, it was between 1998 and 2003. Prior to that, she had been the DDG in the National Department of Public Works. And this one will resonate with some of the people here. She was a senior lecturer at the University of Natal, because she also holds a master's in town regional planning and from the University of Natal, as well as an MSc in social policy and planning, which she got cum laude from the London School of Economics. She also has an MPhil from St. Augustine College and a PhD from the University College in London. Currently, she is the chair of the First Rand Empowerment Fund. She also serves on some boards, the boards of Barloworld and board of Woolworths, and she's also a council member of the Women's University in Africa. She's also received some awards, and she was also a finalist in the Nedbank Woman of the Year Awards, but significantly, she has now just been awarded the Positive Role Model Award for 2026, COMENSA Significant Social Impact Award. And I have a reason that I understand why she would also get that award in particular. But she's also a fellow of the inaugural class of Africa Leadership Institute or Initiative in South Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Lulu Gwagwa, and how we are going to do the session this evening is going to be a conversation. I'll be asking some questions, and she will then take the stage and elaborate on the questions that we've asked. So, Dr. Lulu, thank you once again for availing yourself for this conversation this evening. The first question I'd like to ask, as Prof has said just now, that this is Women's Month in South Africa. Perhaps you could share with us some of the work you, in your personal leadership capacity, have done with women, and particularly young women. I'm thinking here about the Traversing Liminality and any others that you may wish to highlight this evening.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, Nomkhitha. For those for whom this is evening, good evening, and good day, good morning, good whatever, depending on where you are in the world. And Prof, thank you very much also for this platform that you've created, which is a very, very important one for us to kind of discuss and share views and ideas and experiences around leadership. As you said, leadership is not just about leading in the front, it's about the things that we all do. So Nomkhitha, thank you very much. As you said, what I like about tonight is that we're in conversation, so I'm not giving a speech, which is something that suits me best. Coming to the issue of what do I do with women, Nomkhitha, I guess being a woman myself is a question of what do I do with myself. But on a serious note, I've been working with young women for a very long time. And that really comes out of having been a young woman myself and knowing how it feels like to be a young woman in the world, particularly being a Black African woman in the world, how the world views you, and how, as a result of that, you end up viewing yourself in that way too. And so, having been there and now sitting on the other side of the table, as it were, where I'm sitting, as you said, I'm sitting in the boardroom and I'm receiving young women and men coming to present in the boardroom for one thing or another. And I see when they're coming how young women, Black women, African women in particular, tend to shrink themselves. They walk in the boardroom, they're immediately overwhelmed. And you can see the body language. I think you will notice that body language if you've been there yourself. And so out of that experience and out of that noticing, I decided to really specifically work with young women, and I decided to focus on the age group of 21 to 30. So Traversing Liminality is a foundation that has started in 2019, and we focus on inner mastery and supporting young women how to self-lead. Because as we all know, you can't lead if you can't lead yourself. The starting point of leadership is leading yourself. But for you to be able to lead yourself, you need to be, you know yourself. So that self-awareness becomes quite important. And so what we do with these young women, we've designed a one-year fellowship, and I work with coaches, and I've seen some of them online this evening. We work with coaches and we also work with psychologists. And the reason why we focus on that is because we are not mentoring them. Because they're not, and saying that I'm not undermining mentoring, it's precisely because there are a lot of mentors out there. People are mentoring those young women. But for that mentorship to actually land and for them to internalize that, they need to deal with their limiting beliefs first, which is where inner mastery comes in. So we focus on that inner mastery. And what we've realized that a lot of them struggle with childhood trauma as well. And that's why we introduced as well psychotherapy. So it's supporting these young women, therefore, between the ages of 21 to 30. We work across the African continent and diaspora. So wherever you are in the world, as long as you define yourself as a Black African woman between the ages of 21 to 30, then we are there to support you. We are currently in 22 African countries and a number of diaspora countries where you will likely to be finding Africans. That will be in the US, that will be in UK, in Europe generally. So that's what I do these days, Nomkhitha, as somebody who's a pensioner. So that's how I'm spending my time.
Wow, that's so exciting. I mean, talk about legacy and talk about impact. I mean, this is something you yourself started and now it's grown to the levels that you're talking about. And you spoke about young people shrinking themselves, especially, females. But of course, I think young people are young people. You will remember Sheryl Sandberg, the previous COO of Facebook, now Meta, when she was asking women to lean in her sensational book of the same title. But I'm thinking instead of asking women to lean in, should we not rather change the inherited broken system and build one for women to rather lead in? Is there a case to be made for women leadership?
That's a provocative question that you are asking there, Nomkhitha, but an important one. I read Sheryl Sandberg's book quite early on when it came out, and I was touched by it. And I could see myself and some of the examples that she mentioned in the book. You walk into the boardroom, the chair is sitting there. You want to sit as far from the chair as possible so that they don't ask you the question. So you're almost wanting to get under the table, and you see women doing that. And she challenges us. Stay close to the chair. Make sure that they can see you because you want to be visible, that you want to be seen. That's one example that stands out for me in that book, which I read a long time ago. So I think what you're saying there is the work that Sheryl raised is built around essentially a number of assumptions about this table that we as women are invited to kind of lean into. So and if you look at leadership and the table right now, it is quite hierarchical. I mean, as you know, particularly, I'm talking here primarily in corporate, so it is hierarchical. But it also assumes the way leadership is structured and corporate is structured, assumes a separation between work and home, that there's somebody looking after home, and when you are coming here to work, you are just bringing yourself as a worker, and your home things, please, can you leave them at the door when you come in? But it also assumes that as you walk into this room, you come in as an invitee. I think that's when she says lean in, you are coming in you are invited. So when you are invited, your host can kind of look at the watch and say, "Oh, it was nice having you now." When you are invited, the host starts to make those comments, starts to close the book, and starts to ask somebody who was catering, please clear the table. It's time to go. And so that's what leaning in is, because you are invited, which means that you have to operate within the rules of the home. You can't come in my home and demand mkomboti, when in fact we don't do mkomboti. I will offer you what I have, which is water in my home. So there are all of those things that as women we must come in and then accept what is there, as you said, because we are invitee. But I think what you are saying, and which is really what was the work that Sheryl has done, was quite instrumental and was quite leading, cutting edge in my view, and quite bold for that matter. And it was particularly bold coming from somebody like her in the position that she held. So that was important work. But I think there's been a lot of research and challenge around her work, precisely around this thing of assumes that women are invited, and the space that we are coming in is a space that is conducive already. And so when you say maybe we should say lead in, what does that actually mean, lead in? I think for me, what starts to suggest is that perhaps as women, we are saying there's certain things that need to be done differently altogether, rather than us just walking in. And what could be some of those areas that might need to be reconsidered. And I think for me, without getting into detail of what those might be, one of the things that I want to emphasize is that for me, it's not about replacing it's not about men and women, replacing men and then putting in women, because that doesn't really help us. That doesn't take us anywhere. It is about how do we make sure that we create that the way we design, women coming in also as part of the team of architects that are actually designing this table. So rather than coming into a table that is already set, how do we make sure that we are part of the team that is actually designing this table? And if we do that, we will immediately start to consider a whole range of issues. We might start to say, oh, okay, maybe there might be need to be a creche because this complex is quite big. In that way, I don't have to leave my meeting halfway because I'm running to pick up kids. And I remember very vividly when you mentioned the CEO, under pressure as a CEO, chairing a board meeting, chairing a meeting, I was a CEO, an EXCO meeting or something, and my children were small, were young at the time. And where they went to school, aftercare closes at 5. So I'm sitting there, the meeting is going on. By 4:30, I'm starting to feel very edgy because I'm thinking I'm not going to make it. Traffic to get to pick up my kids, which means as a mother at that point, from 4:15, I'm not present in that meeting. I'm not listening because I'm half here, I'm half there. But for somebody else who doesn't know what's going on in my mind, they thinking I'm not competent. I'm not contributing in the meeting. I'm not interested in what's going on. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about my kids. How many times have I gotten to pick up my kids at 4:15? They are now standing by the gate. At that point, I'm a bad mother, but also I'm a bad leader. On the other side. So the whole point is that how do we take all of this into account? But the interesting thing for me also, Nomkhitha, is that there are a lot of men who want to do the same. So by redesigning the table, you actually release men. I mean, the father of today is not the father of yesterday. The father of today wants to be present with their kids. So by redesigning, we are taking into account everybody and their needs. And most importantly, we bring in half the talent that's out there who are mothers, particularly I'm emphasizing working women here, who might leave the world of work because they are struggling to juggle all these balls. But if we redesign, and redesigning does not mean that we are not concerned about performance of the business, because sometimes we think it's an either. So it's not either or. Shareholder value is shareholder value. That's what it is. And our role is to deliver on that. But the question is how do we make sure that as we deliver on that, we do that sustainably, and we are drawing from all the potential talent and skills that we've got out there. So for me, it's this thing of how do we balance the two? But also as we do that, I always talk about this thing of also accountability and agency from women. Because as women also, we can't come in there all the time like crying, oh, they are not looking after us, they are not this and that. We also have to roll up our sleeves and come in there, which is the agency part. That's part of what we're doing in Traversing Liminality as well, to say how do we build self-awareness? How do we also help work with women so that we can deal with limiting beliefs? Because sometimes, even when the environment has changed, because we struggle with limiting beliefs, we can't even see that. And so it is about dealing with all of those. So it's complex, but it's something that we've got to face head on. And the 21st century is asking us to do just that.
Wow, thank you very much. I really liked the response there because it also got me thinking. I was thinking about when I was looking at this question, I was thinking about apartheid because we were told, okay, now apartheid is finished, and then you black people take over and run as if the system was ready for us to just run as it was. And you use the words that were in my mind about, do we not need something completely different so that it also is one inclusive of the men, and then they also can participate, but also it deals with the problem. So I mean, I'm really, there's a lot we can talk about on this topic, but I'm happy to move to the next question if you unless you want to make a comment.
No, I'm fine. I think we can move. So I think the really point I want to emphasize is this making sure that we simultaneously drawing on individual agency, particularly
Mm,
women, but
mm,
also we're dealing with the system itself. So, because
correct,
both have to change. Because if we
correct.
change the system and women still don't believe in themselves and they don't think they belong and all of that, then again, we're not going to see the opportunities that might be there. So it's about how do we do both at the same time.
Agreed. So the next and subsequent questions will be gender neutral because what we wanted to explore with you are the ethical leadership issues in a changing environment. So, as the world becomes more complex, faced with geopolitical uncertainty, inequality, rapid technological change, including what the AI is doing, what are these qualities that will define an ethical leader, whether he is male or female or even non-gender specific?
Nomkhitha, I think you're right. There's a lot changing in the world. I think sometimes I wake up and I'm thinking, where am I? I mean, I think as somebody who used to be in corporate those years and I look at what's going on, it's very
Mm,
complex. It's not there's technology issues that are going on as you say. The world geopolitically is not what we knew. So there's a lot going on. And I think as leaders, how do we lead in this very complex, ever changing and the speed of change? I think the world has always been changing, but I think what we are seeing now is the rapidness of that change and what it does to the environment, our operating environment, if you want to call it that. I think for me the first quality which I think is required of leaders today is what I call moral courage. And you talked about ethical leaders. So I'm now talking about ethical leadership. What does ethical leadership mean, and what does it require of us in this ever-changing world? I think the first one for me is moral courage, and moral courage here is not just the courage to do things. It is about being able to make decisions even when everybody else disagrees with you. And also sometimes, even when those decisions that you are taking might be at a personal cost. I think those who are in South Africa today will know what's going on in the Madlanga Commission. I think if you look at that commission and what they're doing, that's what they're demonstrating moral courage. Because I'm sure there's a lot of risk, personal risk in what they are doing, and risk to their families as well. But what they are doing for the country, for the betterment of the country. So that's what I mean by, for me, one of the things that's required of an ethical leader is that ability to make those decisions, which sometimes might be unpopular and sometimes they might be a personal cost, because you're looking for at the bigger good of society out there. I think the second one for me, which is sometimes very, very difficult for leaders, is humility and intellectual honesty. I think sometimes as leaders, we because we're leading from the front, and that's how we understand leadership, is stand in the front and be the hoo-ha leader. But I think for me, it is about that humility and intellectual honesty. Intellectual honesty here is being able to say, I don't know. I'm not sure here. I'm anxious here. I'm actually scared. I'm scared. I know there's a decision that I need to take, but I'm scared. But for you to be able to do that, it's going to also be about who am I surrounding myself with, who I can sit with and talk and be vulnerable. So that vulnerability is very, very important for an ethical leader, in my view. I think the other one, particularly at this time in the world, is that commitment to human dignity. If you look at what's happening geopolitically, look at what's happening in the Middle East, look at what's happening in Eastern Europe, and what's happening to human beings in what, because it's leaders, and say inverted commas, who've made those decisions of what's happening in those geographies. And we can say a lot about that as well in terms of what's happening in our own continent. And so for me, I think this commitment to human dignity is something that I think if you say you are an ethical leader, I think for me, this concern for human beings, first and foremost, is something that must be top of mind. I think the other one, I think you raised, because of the complexity of what leaders are dealing with, it's systems thinking. If you think about it, we're dealing with, as a leader, in a business or in a community, you are having to, in your leadership, in the decision that you are taking, in your strategy, amongst others, you got to bring in climate change. You got to deal with issues of migration. I mean, we had to deal with that in South Africa, never mind that we've not done a very good job around that. You got to deal with economic inequality globally. That's what you've got. These are some of the things you got to bring into your mind. Cybersecurity, which is what all the good technology has brought in, cybersecurity also comes with that. You've got to take that into account. If you think about what we saw during COVID around global supply chain issues that you've got to also think about. If I take this decision, what if this happens? What if that happened? Again, if you see what's happening in the Middle East, you look at what's happened, Russia, Ukraine, we didn't think that we would have issues around fertilizer. Just something as simple as that. But what's happening in that and the Strait of Hormuz, you can see what that has done to supply chain. And public health, as I said, we saw with COVID. So each time, I'm just mentioning a couple of those that are top of mind because we're all aware of those. Each decision that you take, even if you think that decision is at a micro level, you'll be surprised how it impacts on all of these. And so just deciding whether in the office it's cold today, and so we're going to put 3 heaters here. I mean, you are impacting on something just by that decision of saying, do I buy heaters in the office? Do I invest in solar? And so as I say, some of those decisions might seem micro, but they've got macro implications. And so that's one of the things that you've got to bring all of these into a decision, into one very specific decision that you are taking at a company level. I think one of the other big things, Nomkhitha, that I want to bring in here is that as a leader, we are stewards of resources, not of today, but of tomorrow. And so how do we steward these resources? It doesn't matter at which level, whether you are a CEO or chair of a listed company, or you are a CEO of a small NGO, you are a steward. And so I think this thing of stewardship is something that I don't think we're talking enough about as leaders, and it's something that I think we need to bring in very closely. I think issues of fairness and inclusion, they're almost automatic, because if you are a steward, automatically you are concerned about, and also about dignity of the human being, you are automatically going to be concerned about fairness and inclusion as well. So I would say, for me, these are some of the things that we need to be concerned about. But for you to be able to do all those things, you must be prepared to be transparent and accountable. I mean, if you look particularly in our continent, one of the things that we're struggling with is because our political leaders are not accountable, but we are also not holding them accountable. So this issue of accountability is also something that's important. So these are some of the issues. Of course, tech-wise is also something that's important. And it does not mean you must be a technologist yourself. As a leader, you need to know that we are living in this world. And therefore, how do I make sure that I've got the skills around me that can provide guidance to the business in terms of how we deal with all of these issues. So those days of thinking that a leader is a person who's sitting in front and not a team, a collective, bringing different skills, different ways of solving problems, men and women, young and old, black and white, and also sexuality as well. I mean, there's a whole range of issues here because you are thinking about human dignity here. So inclusion goes beyond just men and women and race. And there's issues of religion, what we are seeing in the Middle East. So what are these? When we talk inclusion, what are these variables that we are thinking about, and how do we expand those to make sure that we are leading as stewards? So those are some of the points that I would raise just at top of mind, Nomkhitha.
Thank you so much. I mean, moral courage, humility and intellectual honesty, the whole issue around vulnerability, the commitment to human dignity, that's deep actually, because people don't look at it at the depth of it. They think I'm the boss, I'm the CEO, and they don't think about the real concern for human beings. I particularly like the stewardship of resources, especially when you say not even of resources for today, but of the future. And I find that the reason why things go wrong is because people are saying, when I was the CEO of ABCD, things were fine. But they forget that whatever they planted there, is something that then the other person must take over. I mean, before I left the post office, we were invited by the president to a meeting where they wanted to introduce this super SOE. I think it was Pravin Gordon's project, but I don't know now where that project is. But all CEOs of state-owned enterprises were invited there. So we went to the meeting with the president. And there I met a guy who's no longer the CEO of Safcol now, but I think he's CEO of Dinell. And I met him for the first time. So we are introduced. So I said, well, my name is Nomkhitha Mona. He's like, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so. I think his first name was Tsepo. And so I said to him, oh, I see you guys are doing well. I mean, you are the only SOC that also has declared dividends. I think the year before they had declared it was about 1 million, but a dividend is a dividend. And it's not usual, for state-owned companies. So he says to me, you know what? I should actually thank you because you left something for me to work on. And that for me, it doesn't matter how much you pay me. That was a thing that said to me, okay, this thing that you do, because it is my view, whenever I get to a place, I don't fix it for myself for today. I fix it for the next one. So I really particularly resonate with that. And I do think if most leaders in the country and elsewhere had that mentality, things would not be as bad as they are. People wouldn't loot as they are looting. They would know that they are building for the next generation. So I really like that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the short-termism, which we call, is not leadership. I mean, you are just doing I think if you look at our political leaders, I put inverted commas, I mean, there are proper political leaders and then there are leaders. And so I think they look at the term, whether it's 4 years or it's 5 years. So you're basically looking at this 5 years and somebody else comes, they look at their 5 years, they start from scratch. Even in the private sector, I mean, we're looking at the results, interim results. What am I going to be saying? And then the end of the year results. You're looking from results to results, from quarter to quarter, and sometimes it's the way we're measured as well, how they are incentivized. And so, how do you make sure that you put in place those incentives that actually drive this behavior towards long-term thinking? I think at the moment, if you go to the private sector, your LTIs, the longest will be 5 years. And maybe we should be looking at 10-year LTIs, which says even if you left, you can't draw. It can only be 5 years after. You can't cash until 5 years after you've left, because it changes the way you think about things. Because now you are not looking at when is my LTI vesting. You are also thinking that 5 years after I've gone. So I'm not going to either go and acquire a business just to grow the balance sheet now. But actually, when I know that I shouldn't be doing this, it's not a healthy business, but I'm looking into the future. So I think the incentive structure itself doesn't help, which is the same with politicians, because we get voted every 4 years, every 4 years, every 4 years. And so could we think differently about our electoral systems? I think in South Africa, we know that the proportional representative one is not working for us. It is driving the wrong behavior in terms of accountability. Politicians are accountable to their parties and not to the voter, but it's the system that is actually driving them in that direction. So this thing of incentives as well is something that's very important, because when it's all said and done, we're human beings as well. And as I always say, only God is perfect. Sometimes those those traits of being human beings come in there. So what guardrails do we put in place to support leaders to do the right thing, but do it correctly and consistently so?
Indeed. Just to ensure there's no confusion, I mentioned post office and then I was talking about SAFCO, the South African Forestry Company Limited. I was group CEO there in, I think, around until 2015. So I was referring to them having done well post our departure, just to clarify. So the question really, I think this is a good segue from what you've just said into the next question. Why good leaders sometimes fail, even the ethical ones, and how failure can create better leaders?
I think the first thing is maybe what I said. I think one of the things for me is, what is failure and how do we define failure? So if you are running a business, what would you define as failure? Would it because I haven't declared dividend? Would it because I've declared losses this year? Yeah, what are the measures? So one of the things is something I'm not going to say how I would define failure, but I'm just flagging that, is that we also need to think through what do we define as failure. So it's something that's very important. I think, having said that, the first thing is that, as I said, ethical leaders are also human beings. So that's something that we got to also, when we say somebody is ethical, we are not necessarily saying they're good at what they do. Maybe you'll say to me, what do I mean by good? So ethical means you are ethical leadership, as I discussed earlier. It is about that moral compass that you have. It's about the moral compass that drives you. It's about those values that drive you. And so it does not mean that because you are ethical, the complexity that we're dealing with today is not going to overwhelm you. The complexity that we're dealing with today will overwhelm everybody, whether you are ethical or not. So if you have not surrounded yourself with good, competent people who are also ethical, you might fail in terms of what you might set up as targets. And so I think that's the first thing, is that ethical leaders can sometimes misread the operating environment. It does not mean because you are ethical, you can project necessarily and say, as a result of XYZ, this is what is going to happen, and therefore this is how I set up the strategy of the business. I think those are two different things. So I think you can misrepresent events as an ethical leader, but you can also underestimate and the unintended consequences of your decisions. Even if, as an ethical leader, you can also underestimate some of the consequences of the decisions that you make. As an ethical leader, you are also like everybody else. You are working with incomplete information because of the changing environment that we are dealing with. So all of those are challenges that every leader is facing, whether you are ethical or not. So I think that's something that's very important to remember. The other thing, Nomkhitha, which I think it's important, is that sometimes success blinds us. So you could be an ethical leader and you're doing well as a leader, you are producing the results, you are delivering on whatever it is that you are doing. And sometimes that could drive, I've done this before and this has worked, and not be able to see when that operating environment has changed, and therefore I need to change gear, I need to do this differently, maybe I need a different person there and there, because in your mind, I've done this. I think you know, people will say, this is how we do things here. We've done it before, and you are trying to raise question. It does not necessarily mean that that person who is resisting that is unethical. They're just stuck in the way that they do things. This environment today requires adaptability. Does not mean if you are ethical, you are necessarily adaptable. And this environment, which is ever changing, needs that adaptability. So I think that's something that's important. The other one is the isolation of leadership. We always say the higher you go, the colder it becomes, because you become, it's lonely up there. I think for those who've been particularly in corporate, in leadership positions, CEOs, chairs of boards, you know how it feels to be out there. And sometimes we disengage from what's happening in the environment because we are up there on our own. So how do we make sure that you continuously put processes in place, particularly people that can make sure that you are grounded, you've got a good understanding of what's going on in the environment or in the organization that you are working in. So this isolation is one of the in my mind, that's one of the things that I don't want to mention some names. I nearly mentioned some names of good ethical people that I know political people, political leaders, but they started, one of the CEOs of First Rand used to say, started to drink, when he used to say, let's make sure we are not drinking our own Kool-Aid. And drinking your own Kool-Aid is that now it tastes nice, and so I continuously make my own Kool-Aid. But when you're leading, you want to make sure you are tasting different Kool-Aids from different directions, because it helps you to keep grounded. So sometimes that isolation gets us, and also that success drives this drinking my own Kool-Aid syndrome. I think the other one, Nomkhitha, is competing ethical obligations, because this is very real. And I mean, I'll give you some example. You're working in an organization, and I mean, the economic situation out there at the moment for anybody who's leading a company, an organization, is tough. the operating environment is tough. So you're sitting there now, you are having to make these ethical decisions between saving the company and saving jobs. You are an ethical leader. Which way do you go? There's jobs, there's jobs, and there's a company to be saved. Those are ethical questions, choices that you've got to make. There's also shareholder value, there's social impact. Those that are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but sometimes you have to make those choices. So I think these are big questions that we've got to make. There's innovation that you drive innovation, but innovations comes at a risk. And so sometimes, because we're worried about risk, I had a risk workshop here in my organization this whole day today, and we're talking about risk. Coming out of the risk workshop, I'm almost like, I can't do this. Maybe it's a risk. And so you start to now not be sure how far you can go, because you are mindful of managing risk. But there's innovation as well, which requires of you to actually increase your risk appetite. And so these are the things that, whether you're ethical or not, you've got to face these issues as well. But also I think in South Africa, more than, I guess, in anywhere else, I guess I'm a South African, there are individual rights, there are collective rights. How do you balance those individual rights and collective rights? So these are all competing ethical obligations that as a leader you go to deal with, and you can trip in the process, or because they are competing, others will see you as failed. Others, I mean, if you are on the first one that I made of jobs and organization, the shareholders will be happy because you've saved the company. But the labor will see you as having failed because you cut 200 jobs. And communities and families of those workers will see you as having failed. And so, again, that's where I was saying, how do we define failure? The other one, which again we don't talk about, particularly women, is fatigue. It's just burnout. I think we, as people who get into leadership positions tend to be those people who are driven. We are driven, go, 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 and I'm one of those. Go, 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 go. Even just today, I'm in Johannesburg and I stay in Pretoria. I had to call at home and ask the driver, please bring me some tablets there, because I was feeling a bit, because I was traveling the whole of last week. Yesterday I was then, and today, risk workshop, I could feel that my body is wobbly. Again, because I'm driving. If I don't do this, it's going to collapse. If I don't do this. So this thing of self-care as leaders is something that we battle with, and we feel guilty when we're taking time off. My daughter, as you talked about here, when I told her that I'm not feeling, he says, Mama, you should not, tomorrow, the rest of the week, you are not going to do anything. And I'm saying, yeah, I think you're right. But deep down, I know actually at 4, and I'm waking up at 6 because I've got another meeting. And so this thing of the sustainability of our bodies, literal body, listening to our bodies, is something as leaders we don't also consider. But at the end of the day, we are human beings, and we get fatigued as well. So these are some of the things that I think, for me, we need to be looking at as leaders. So develop humility, strengthen our self-awareness, focus on self-care as well, and also just having a group of people around us who can help us to test our judgment calls. Because as leaders, the higher you go, as they say, skill is less important than judgment. You are being called to make judgment calls rather than skill. And when you make judgment, you're calling on something else other than skill. And so these are some of the things that we've got to continuously be very aware of as leaders.
Well, thank you. I'm enjoying this immensely. What I've done is I've compressed the next 2 questions, and I'm asking them together as we move towards closure, because I know that Prof would like the audience to engage as well, but we're not there yet. So the next question is around what AI and digital transformation are doing, because they are constantly reshaping every industry. And another compounding effect here is the need to lead multi-generational teams. And I was wondering what it is that you see as challenges, but also as opportunities brought about by these changes. And the next question, which was going to stand alone, but I'm bringing it in here now, is why do people often resist change, even when change is necessary? And how should a leader deal with people who strongly, strongly resist change?
Maybe let me start with the last one whilst I'm trying to think about the first one. I'm glad you asked both because it gives me time. I think the thing around resistance, I think sometimes as leaders we misdiagnose people's response as resistance, when in fact people are struggling with fear of the unknown. That's what's at the core of it. It's fear of the unknown. And I've been doing this in this way and that way. And now I hear there's something else coming. And I'm not even clear what it is and where that's going to put me. At the moment, I'm secure. I know what I wake up in the morning. I get to my desk, what I do. I know what's defined as success. I know if I do this, I'm going to get my bonus. And now I've planned this. I'm going to buy a car. My child is going to university next year. I'm saving my September bonus is going to co-optave. And then there's change. Where does that put me? It's fear of the unknown. I think sometimes, I think as leaders, it's empathy for that before we judge and start bashing people as they're resisting change. It is about being empathetic to that. Empathy does not mean you don't follow through on the decision. That's not what it means. It's the how you handle that decision. Empathetic. And part of that is about including people in designing what the new will look like. Because then part of that starts to get people to understand first and foremost why it's important. Because sometimes that change, it's because the long-term sustainability of the business is at risk if we don't change. And that's why we need that change. So if you are sitting there at lower levels, you're not seeing the big picture. You're not seeing what's coming. And so as a leader, part of your job is to see that crystal ball out there, and so be able to preempt that. And so I think key to it for me is about us being able to really break it down to, you are speaking to the cleaner in the office, to that level of the cleaner. The other thing that's related to that, Nomkhitha, is loss of control, is grief, loss of control. So if I'm a manager and I'm managing 15 people, and now there's change that's coming. Now I don't know, maybe they say they're going to be flat structure, there's going to be this. Now, I mean, who am I managing? And I've got control, I've got resources, I've got a budget. Now, I don't know, I'm not going to have a budget. Don't underestimate how we get the ego sounds negative. How we get, I don't know what the English word is. Now it's 7. I'm supposed to be speaking closer. How we get motivated by position. These are again human beings about control. So don't underestimate that. There's grief, there's loss related to this. So what I'm saying here is that let's make a distinction between those constructive detractors and those that are destructive. So separate the two. Don't put everybody in one basket. But for you to be able to do that, you must be a discerning leader yourself so that you can see the questions. Because sometimes as leaders, one question, we are sitting there, we are closing in without listening very carefully where this person is coming from. If you listen carefully, you can see that this person is not resisting change. They're not clear about what's going on. They're worried about their job. They love this company and everything. When they go home, they're known at home as, I'm the manager of X. Now you change my title, I'm the coordinator of X. What do I tell my children? I mean, when I retired from the IDT, my mother struggled with it, was saying, Lulu, I mean, even my mother was struck. She used to say to her friends at church, you know, my daughter, that one who's the CEO of the IDT. He does not know how to describe her daughter because now I don't have the title. So these are things that seem very small, but they're important because they bring people along. They bring people to belong because there's identity issues involved as well in there. So I'm saying let's think through what we mean by resisting change. And let's separate the issues. I think the last one, part of the problems, I speak a lot, and the last one around AI, I'll be very brief on that because it's also outside my pay grade as well. But what I know for sure, one of the things I think we need to think about very carefully, I think the benefits of AI are very clear. That we can't take away. But I think the important thing for me around there is just to think about the human beings behind that. How do we make sure that the human beings are not lost in the process of technology? Because when it's all said and done, I talked about as a leader, ultimately there's judgment that you're going to bring in. So the AI is going to help us to drive efficiency. But that effectiveness and that judgment call is still going to have to be done by the individual. And so let's not abdicate our responsibilities as leaders to AI. AI is not going to manage anybody. AI is not going to lead anybody. As leaders, it's still going to be our responsibility to do that. And also to know where it's applicable, where it's not. Where we don't necessarily have to replace people. So I think for me, that's the key thing. But the other one is also not underplay the biases that are inherent in some of these things, particularly for us who are Black and us who are women, because somebody is feeding information in there that is being analyzed. And so let's that also be mindful of those. So as who are driving those efficiencies and everything, let's just make sure that it doesn't yet again bring that canceling out of Black people, canceling out of women in the process.
Thank you very much. Our very last question then is, I was speaking to a friend just the other day, and I'm talking to her about the platform. So she says to me, so she attends sometimes when she's got time, so she understands what we're doing here. So she says to me, you guys are discussing all these really, really good topics, but you are basically speaking to yourselves. And she is in the public sector. She says, the question for me is, how can these conversations be filtered into the public sector in terms of the public sector leadership so that they can influence them to inculcate a culture of ethical leadership at all times? And I thought, let me actually add this question to my questions.
That's an interesting one. I think that one is somebody, you and I have been in the public sector. So I will start off by defending the public sector by saying that I don't believe that necessarily public sector leaders are unethical and private sector leaders are ethical. That it's a black and white like this. We've seen serious scandals in the private sector that have cost economies, have cost shareholders, that have cost. What's that company in Cape Town? The leader subsequently committed suicide. A big. The name is just I've forgotten that. The Enrons of this world, huge global scandals in the private sector. And so I think for me it's important to say ethical leaders are there in the private sector and in the public sector as well. So that's the first point. I think the second point for me is also, I talked about the issue of accountability. I think, yeah, Steinhoff, somebody, Lungile, thanks Lungile, it's Steinhoff, yeah, Steinhoff. I think, again, the human beings do need support. I talked about the guardrails. I think the private sector have got stronger guardrails than you have in the public sector. I think the accountability circle is quick in the private sector. In the public sector, it goes round and round, takes years before it comes back. And so that encourages people to say, maybe the net might not catch me. So I think there are those issues as well that we need to bear in mind. I think the second thing that I will challenge Prof here to say, how are we, Prof, in this platform, reaching out to public sector leadership to make sure that they participate in these conversations? Because for me, the important thing that what I'd like to see is that there are it's not conversations that are happening in the public sector and conversations that are happening in the private sector. I want to see conversations, leadership, conversations that are happening in the country, because both the public sector, private sector, and civil society, we are all in this together in order to make sure that we are building a future for our children and grandchildren. And this can't be done by the private sector. Primarily, the people who set the actual frame is actually the public sector, because they are set policies, they set laws within which the private sector operates. So it's very important, and it's in our interest in the public sector and in private sector, as somebody who's been in all, I've been in academia, in the NGO sector, in private sector and public sector, come to realize that the public sector is probably this most important for us to set the frame, but then it needs all of us to be there, to be in it together. So Prof, I'm challenging you here on this one.
Yeah, thank you. As an avid reader, I know you are such an avid reader. You read everything all the time, particularly female authors. You have a bias towards them, but you do read across. What's the one book you can recommend on leadership?
That's a very difficult one, because as you say, I read so widely. You know, I always read a month, and then I post on social media the books I read that month. I read a book just recently, which I'm going to be posting at the end of this month. And the title is actually fiction. Funny enough, I think you'll be surprised about leadership lessons when you read fiction. I think it's my daughter who introduced me to fiction. I thought I was, as a leader, I'm reading leadership books, I'm reading biographies, and she introduced me to fiction. And I've realized there's a lot of, because what is fiction? Fiction is an artist observing how we live. And they fictionalize that in a way. If fictionalize is a word, I don't even know whether it's a real word in English. But the book that I read is titled Because I Love You. It's written by Joy Watson. The story of this book, very briefly, is about these two young men who are in a relationship. But both families, they don't want to be known, to be seen, that they're actually in this relationship. It's a book that will break your heart into pieces. But why that? Because at the end, I think both of them actually die, tragic deaths, because of trying to hide who they are. I think for me, the lesson there in leadership, firstly, are we creating the right environment for people to show up the way they are? Because it's when people show up fully, authentically as they are, that we're going to get the best out of them in our companies, in our organizations? Are we allowing people to show up fully for themselves? And that's what, for me, the leadership lesson is. Are we judging people because they are this? I'm not going to give them this position because they are this. I can't have him or her in finance because he's gay or because he's black, because he comes from the Eastern Cape, is likely to be corrupt. Are we misjudging people? Because we as leaders, we are so set and dogmatic about who is the right person. We've defined for yourself who's the correct employee. And they look like this, they walk like this, they dress like this, they love these kind of people, they eat this. Can we open ourselves up to what's available out there? And talent is there, is hungry to join our organization. Our role is to create an enabling environment, and the rest will follow.
I've enjoyed this interaction immensely, and I was thinking earlier that if I was in church, I would be saying that the text was actually written for me because there's so many things in which I could relate. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on Nana's PhD that's coming up in London in 2 weeks' time. And as you did say, you are a mother of 2 young adults, and your daughter will be getting a PhD in London. Prof, the floor is back to you, and I am now retiring. Thank you very much, Ms. Lulu.
Thank you very much, Nomkhitha.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms Nomkhitha. Thank you very much. I wonder, maybe can you take maybe 1 or 2 questions before we close, so that we don't? There might be some burning questions from our audience. Just briefly 1 or 2, and then we'll give it to Prof. Zita after that, and we'll close.
I'll be fine. Yeah, thanks, Prof.
Go ahead, Ms Nomkhitha.
I didn't have a question, Prof.
No, I was saying. No, I was asking you, my
questions.
sister. Yes, I was asking if there are any questions from the audience.
Okay, yes.
You've got,
okay,
and others, and then we'll close after some questions. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We'll take the first hand. All right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for a very informative session. I have one question. With regard to your response on the difference between public sector and the private sector, you said something that is very interesting in terms of your observation. How do you suggest the situation of the public sector be addressed so that it can be as responsive as the private sector? Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see the name. Is that Lungile? Was that the...
Yes, before you come in, Dr. Lulu, let's take all the hands, and then you can do that.
Yeah.
Dr. Nikelwa Tengimpene, you are next.
Thank you so much, Nomkhitha, and thank you, Dr. Lulu, for all the wise words you've shared with us. I would like just an expansion on the agency as leadership within our families. How do we shape the upcoming leadership through raising our own children, and also the experience that you get through liminality in terms of how at times unconsciously we block that confidence that they may have getting into the conference rooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can take the 2 questions, Dr. Lulu.
Okay, I always start with the second one whilst I'm thinking about the first one. The second one is a very important question there, Dr. Nigelo. I think my experience with Traversing Liminality is that as parents, we unintentionally sometimes harm our children, unintentionally. And a lot of that has got to do with sometimes projecting our own issues on our children. And I think the biggest challenge that I've found and I want to put out is to mothers. I think mothers have got the biggest influence on children because I guess they are the first caregivers of children. So very, very important in terms of how, as mothers, we raise our children, both boys and girls. And how do we, in the way we show up, even ourselves as mothers? Because sometimes children, it's less about what you say, it's more about what you do. To be conscious about what we do as mothers. Because if as mothers, for example, we are working ourselves to the bone, like I do, I'm not taking, there's no time for self-care, my daughter will think that's how a good woman is the one that works themselves to the bone, that doesn't take time out for themselves. So there's a lot of these nuances that I'm seeing with the girls that were dealing with traversing liminality. And so how do we make sure that in the way we raise our children and what we say also to our children affirms or doesn't affirm them? If as parents, we only affirm our children and clap when they've come back with straight A's, we don't say anything when they are being good human beings, then we are saying the only thing that's accepted for you to be loved here in this family, you must come with straight A's. Even if you are rude to your elders, you whatever, this is the thing that, again, come back, incentives, this is what we see. So sometimes also it's because of how we grew up. We want to make sure that our children make it, they go to school, they get the best results, and we spend less time on shaping a human being. Because a leader, when it's all said and done, a human being is a leader is a human being. But we're not shaping the human being. We are shaping because we are concerned about delivery, about performance. And so how do we balance the two? In saying that, I'm not saying straight A's are not good. I loved straight A's. But how do we make sure that we do both? Because then we start, when we shape the human being, we build the confidence of the young girl. So it's all of those things, Nigelo, that for me are very, very important. It's about the messaging at home. It's about what we incentivize at home. It's about what we do as parents. A lot of these young women are struggling with mother wound. They're struggling with father wound. How present is the father? Do I define my present at home, Prof, as signing the check and sending the 2,000 rand? Or is about me sitting and having a conversation with my daughter, going out for coffee, with making time to just go out and have a coffee at Wimpy with my daughter, just to have that time, which is me and her. These are the things that are very important. Then that young woman starts to have a different expectations of a man in her life, because they've seen that my father took care of me and made time for me, not necessarily just the grades, but me as a human being. So these are some of the things that are important. Lungile, your question is a very difficult one for me in terms of what we do in the public sector. I think, as I said, for me, one of the things I said at a political level, there's an issue of accountability. I think as the electorate, we are not holding our politicians accountable, at least in this country. And so that's something that means that they can't get away with doing some of the things that they're doing. I think that's one thing. I think in terms of those that are in management positions, that's just the civil service. I think most definitely, in my mind, having been there, the whole incentive structure in the public service doesn't drive the right behavior. I think that's one of the things that we really, really need to look at very, very closely. And as I said, also, it is about that cross-pollination between the private and public sector as well. How do we make sure in platforms like these, we make sure that we do have people in the public sector as well? I talk about isolation. If you are in the public sector, you are isolated. There's a lot of isolation there that people feel who are sitting in the public sector. The only time you hear feedback is when people are banging you. Oh, these civil service are corrupt. They are not delivering. Home Affairs sucks. But when you go to the police station, as I did the other day, and I've got good service in time, very little is said about this. The only thing that we see is bad things, which is the opposite with the private sector. And so listening, looking very closely, how do we incentivize, how do we talk about good things that are happening in the public sector? Because there's many of those.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lulu. We are not able to take any other questions. We have overshot on time. And I would like to just read a comment in the group. I did see who it was from, but I can't see the name now anymore. But, oh, it's Mzi. He says, thank you for sharing your insights, Sis Lulu, your reflections on leadership, young women's development, and the power of vision are inspiring and deeply thought-provoking. I truly appreciate the wisdom you offered, and I feel motivated to carry forward the lessons you highlighted in my own work. Thank you very much to everyone. Prof, I'd like to hand over to Professor Zide, and I take it that Prof Mazwe, you would then answer the question asked by Dr. Lulu, maybe in the next session. Over to you, Dr. Zide, Professor Zide.
Ms Nomkhitha, I must first thank you as a very professional facilitator of this conversation. I think you really laid the ground for very fertile engagement and positive response from Dr. Lulu. So thank you so much, Nomkhitha. I must also extend our gratitude to Professor Mazwe. You know, when we look back at the height of the COVID, we did not know at the time that this is where we will be, of darkness which appeared at the time. We had lost hope as a country, but the God that we pray said something to you to come up with this platform, which has really grown in leaps and bounds. And we are very happy that we have had a person of your caliber together with Dr. Mazwe, Majola, for creating this space. And so I want to thank Dr. Lulu again and congratulate her on the forthcoming graduation of her daughter. You know, I was pleasantly surprised when Lulu said she is now retired. And I looked at her face, I said, no, come on. I mean, we are retirees, definitely not you, Lulu. But anyway, I think it's by grace of God that you have such beautiful genes, which I guess you're taking them from your mom. Your presentation, without me repeating it.
Not my mom, not my mom, Prof. Not my mom, my father.
No, remember, this is Women's Month. This is Women's Month. So, yeah. So, thank you very much for a very take it, close the door. For inspiring, motivational, instructive, and courageous presentation. You know, you have really opened our eyes and ears We have listened to every word, and I liked when you defined and explained what it is understood by ethical leadership. And I'm not going to repeat what you said, but we have approach came up with another dimension of ethical leadership. And when Ms Nomkhitha asked a question about why ethical leaders sometimes fail, your approach was, first, let us interrogate what we mean by failure. Before we just say, well, everybody is a failure. But your approach has really been very thought-provoking, moral courage, and the ability to make decisions, even if such decisions are unpopular. And then you touched on humility as well as commitment to human dignity, which we sometimes miss, quite a lot. And when you spoke about being stewards of tomorrow's resources, emphasized in thanking you. And you went on to explain the culture of this is how we do things around here. When people are in fact afraid of change, and that sometimes it is the approach and the manner in which you explain things. And so with that understanding, Lulu, I think that there is room for us to call you back on this platform, and we share your experiences. And I like, and Prof. Majola and Nomkhitha will know me about this, that I always asked colleagues who have made presentations as to whether or not they have thought of putting their ideas into a book. So what I would like to check with you, Lulu, with all this experience, both from the public sector and the private sector, having been a mother and walking through all these challenges and complexities of life or leadership, have you thought of putting these ideas into a book so that that legacy, which you'll be leaving behind, as you said, in one of your slides or presentations, so that we can look back and say, Lulu Gwagwa walked this path, and this is what we take here in a book form. So with those words, you can respond to the book, that it will be in the shelves within the next couple of months. But let me thank you nonetheless, Lulu. May God bless you, your family, as well as bless you. I hope you will be flying to the UK for your daughter's graduation. When you do that, and may God and the ancestors of Africa and your gods be with you. Thank you ever so much. I take the reins back to Prof. Mazwe Majola to close up the session. Thank you, Lulu.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks, my professor. Thank you very much. We've always been troubled by the challenge and the question that my sister, Dr. Lulu, posed in terms of attracting more public sector colleagues. We do have public sector colleagues who are here who attend this platform, but we obviously would like to get more. At some stage, I remember we once discussed this. I'm glad that Cecile Liso is here because when she was still DG of Public Administration and Services, actually I thought maybe I would use her to get the the people, all the employees of to see if you can get them. Obviously, it is a challenge, but we are open to suggestions, to inputs, contributions as to how we can attract more. Because we'd like to learn more from the sector as well. But I'm glad that we do have very senior colleagues who attend this platform as well. We want more, even in private sector, we want more. Another challenge that we've always had and still troubling me is the issue of getting more younger and emerging leaders to attend, because this platform mainly is really attended by senior leaders and scholars, but we need to empower young ones as well, because at the end of the day, we find preaching to the converted, we need more younger ones. So please assist us, whoever will share maybe some ideas as to how we can really get more emerging and young leaders who can attend. When the platform may be a little bit intimidating, as someone once told me, but because of the caliber and the quality of people who attend. But when we started the platform, we always had the values of humility and respect. Anyone who attends here, if you can, no matter if you've got doctors and professors and senior leaders in private sector, but the respect that we always maintain here, we always make sure that no one should attend and find themselves or himself be intimidated. Yeah, we would like to get more ideas. I'm happy that at least within the platform, as I said last time, we've published 4 books emanating from this platform. We have really assisted many colleagues. There's so many colleagues who joined the platform as the Mrs. and Mrs. and Mrs. who are doctors now. We've got a lot of doctors that we have assisted here. People or colleagues who are doctors now in this platform who came and then we assisted them. Last year, we had the deputy minister who was attending here very regularly, who was at the time we were assisting her with her PhD. She completed or graduated in December and she stopped coming. But at least we do assist a lot of colleagues who really want to become with their postgraduates, especially masters and PhDs level. So yeah, we are really open any ideas that will assist us so that we become impactful. I mean, we cannot come here with a caliber of people that we are here and we are not impacting our society and our country. That's our dream. That's what we want. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, there's an impact outside there. So hopefully, not only to Dr. Lulu, but to anyone as well who's here, please assist us with any ideas so that we can grow together and learn together, because that's exactly why we are here. With that, thank you so much, Ms Nomkhitha, for moderating and putting this together and moderating it. And thanks, my sister, Dr. Lulu. Really, I agree with Professor Zide. We will definitely engage you in the very near future to come back, because you've empowered us a lot tonight, and we need this game. So when, I don't want to say if, but when Sister Nomkhitha calls you, engage you must always know that, oh, it's that time when we are back. But definitely we will ask you to come back at some stage to assist. And then the book issue will be on you with that one as well. That one will assist you with that. We've done it in this platform. So many colleagues who have published books. And yeah, that's why we are here, just to assist each other. So thank you so much for a wonderful session, for empowering us and inspiring us. Ladies and gentlemen, to everyone who's here, thank you, especially to those who have joined us for the first time. Remember that we meet every Wednesdays. Next week, we've got another great masterclass, great super bumper Wednesday. So please join us again. But before we leave, can you find a react? I don't know what is called there. There's an icon there that we always touch down there as we are giving a round of applause and appreciation to our speaker. So find something there that you can press, all of you, same time, let's do it. Let's go ahead. Please do it. I can see that there are those who have not done it yet. Please find something and press it there. We are appreciating our speaker, and we are just saying thank you so much for joining us and empowering us. Let us meet again next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. Look in details, same thing. So please do come. We'll appreciate you as we learn together. Thank you. The session is adjourned now until we meet again next week, Wednesday. May God bless you, and may God bless Africa, particularly Africa, our beautiful continent. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Prof,
and good
and
night,
thank you to
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.